They told us either get out today or be prepared to stay. And so we came to London hoping to get a flight home.
As soon as we heard about a potential shutdown of France, I called the embassy and I asked them if they could confirm this for me. And they said they could. And that I asked them, what are the next steps I should take? And they said, you should leave the country, try to get out as soon as you can to get back to the United States, or you'll have to stay until they open the borders again. And that wasn't really an option for us.
Yeah,
so
and that was just a few hours ago, so here we are.
Yep.
When the travel ban was first announced last Wednesday, we tried to change our flight to move it up because we were afraid something like this might happen. And the airline basically said, nope, we can't do that. The only thing we can do is give you a voucher. So then today we were like, all right, we'll take the voucher. Just give us something so we can get home. And then they're like, nope, sorry, we can't give you a voucher. So now we're not really sure what we're going to do. But hopefully find a flight back to the U.S.
Yeah, just make it back to the U.S., I guess.
I feel fine, and so does she. So we could be asymptomatic and potentially carrying it. So we're really just concerned that we would pass it on to our families or anyone else that could be vulnerable. So
both of us have talked about plans. If we test positive, what we'll do. If we test negative, what we'll do. And so all we can do is just kind of take it step by step from there.
It'll take about a year to create a coronavirus vaccine. That's according to Dr. Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. But why does it take that long? NBC News medical correspondent Dr. John Torres explains.
We heard your biggest concerns about the new coronavirus outbreak, and we're here to answer some of your biggest questions about when will a vaccine be available. So let's get started. So how do vaccines work? A great question. Vaccines help your body build immunity to specific infections by using an imitation infection. That produces the right blood cells and antibodies to fight off the virus. When imitation infection eventually goes away, well, the body is left with memory white blood cells. Those know how to fight the strain of the virus away in the future. So how long until a coronavirus vaccine is available?
It would take then about a year to a year and a half to be fully confident that we would have a vaccine that would be able to protect the American people.
That's because it takes a significant amount of time to create potential vaccines and then test them extensively to ensure they're both safe and effective. Obviously, right now, we don't have a vaccine yet, but it is in the works. In fact, there are multiple in the works. The World Health Organization held a briefing on March 6, 2020, where the Director General announced that they alone received 20 applications for the purpose of vaccine development.
I had the vaccine yesterday at 8 a.m. I'll have a couple follow-up phone calls today and tomorrow. I'll go back in next week for a blood draw, and a week after that for another blood draw. 4 weeks from yesterday, I'll go for the second vaccination and then repeat those steps for the next 4 weeks.
That was Jennifer Howler. She was the first person to be tested with the COVID-19 vaccine on March 16th. What is the process of finding a vaccine and who is involved? Vaccine development starts with years of work in the laboratories of research hospitals, universities, and biotech companies, as well as the National Institutes of Health, which contributes a lot of background research. Larger pharmaceutical companies then pick up promising developments and begin the process of running 3 phases of clinical trials. That's where the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, comes in. They are responsible for approving the initial application to begin vaccine development, and they set strict guidelines for the clinical trials. FDA rules require a third party to sponsor the trials, which means they choose the research institutions that carried out the testing and make sure the FDA guidelines are met. Often this responsibility falls on the NIH. During the first phase, the vaccine is tested on less than 100 healthy young volunteers. The researchers are looking for serious side effects. The second phase increases the pool to a few hundred volunteers, and the third phase tests thousands of volunteers to test the true effectiveness of the vaccine at preventing the disease. Once the vaccine has been thoroughly tested and licensed by the FDA, a team of medical experts from the CDC called the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices reviews all the data from the months of research, development, and testing and determines how the vaccine should be administered, who should get it, and what risk factors are present. Together, the CDC and the FDA continue to monitor the effectiveness and safety of the vaccine for as long as it's in use.
And I've directed the FDA to eliminate outdated rules and bureaucracy so this work can proceed rapidly, quickly, and I mean fast.
So what is the state of the race to develop a vaccine? Well, we are still pretty far away, but at the moment, several pharmaceutical companies and private bioresearch firms are working on vaccines and treatments, and a few of them are pretty far along. Leading the pack is Moderna. They've already sent a batch of their vaccine to the NIH's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases to begin the first round of clinical trials this month. Moderna's vaccine works differently than traditional vaccines. It injects nanoparticles with genetic instructions that tell the body's immune system to attack the virus. This makes it faster to produce, but this type of vaccine has never been licensed for public use before. Gilead Sciences is another company at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19, but it isn't focusing on a vaccine. Instead, Gilead is testing an existing antiviral treatment to cure patients who have already contracted coronavirus. It's called remdesivir, and it's already being used by doctors in the U.S., Italy, and China to treat patients with severe cases, and promisingly, one patient in the U.S. has recovered after being treated with remdesivir. In terms of conventional vaccines, it's anyone's game at this point. A host of pharmaceutical companies and biotech firms have begun development on coronavirus vaccines, but many estimates don't have them beginning human trials until the end of the year. So what to take from this? Well, a vaccine isn't going to be the magic solution to this pandemic. Scientists will undoubtedly develop one at some point, but it's going to take time. In the meanwhile, you need to do the things you need to do to stay safe. That means washing your hands, having social distance 6 feet apart from each other, and staying home if you're sick.
The coronavirus just crushing industries across the U.S., especially small businesses like locally owned restaurants. Many of them have been forced to close their doors and have even had to lay off employees. Danny Meyer, the head of Union Square Hospitality Group in New York City, probably best known for the Shake Shack as one of them. He let go about 2,000 people yesterday. NBC business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent joins us now from...
It's just impossible to reconcile for a purpose-driven business that puts people first to say that the only thing you can do to take care of people is to lay them off. It just doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. On the other hand, restaurants with zero revenues cannot pay people.
A really tough decision a lot of restaurant owners have to make right now. NBC business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent joins us now from Los Angeles. She's at Canter's Deli. Joe, restaurants in L.A. aren't allowing customers to dine in, only offering takeout and delivery. We're, of course, seeing that here in New York, too. How is Canter's dealing with that?
Canter's is doing the best it can, and it represents so many restaurants all across the country that are suffering from the same situation, where they've got these beautiful cases full of pastries, they've got a deli full of food, they have a restaurant that could be operational, but because they are respecting public health guidelines, they've closed the dine-in area behind me, which is completely dark. I just got a chance to sit down with a third generation of Canter's here at Canter's Deli. Her name is Jackie Cantor. She's the co-owner, and she says she's really been struggling because she's had to make layoffs as we go along in these recent days. Here's what she had to say.
It's heartbreaking, and not only that, what I've done yesterday, I had 2 waiters that worked here, so I put them in the deli, and then I had nobody to wash the dishes. So they had to help me wash the dishes. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use people in different ways that I never have before, and they're willing to do it because they need money.
So beyond the workers who are being laid off, obviously those individuals don't have an income coming in to pay their rent, to pay for the car insurance, to get the gas they need to go find a new job. And so what we're seeing is a few miles over, another restaurant group, Moza, is stepping up and saying, okay, our restaurants are closed, but we are going to provide meals to go, pack them up and give them to restaurant workers who have been laid off, who aren't getting enough hours to survive. So this is an industry that is really coming together in a very difficult time. And Allison, the reality is touching consumers in a major way as well. OpenTable is telling me that reservations on their platform are down 84%. So you see consumers obviously unable or unwilling to, go to restaurants, and then all of these places closing down. And take a look at this empty Canter's Deli here. It's completely empty. I've been here a million times. I've had the matzo ball soup probably 20 times here. And I've sat in these crowded booths. You can almost You can always get a seat. I mean, sometimes you have to line up. But honestly, it's never like this. And what Jackie Cantor has told me, too, is that to save money, to cut costs, she's not turning on the electricity at certain times of the day. This is a 24-hour iconic deli. Think of it as like the Katz's Deli of Los Angeles. And you're seeing it really just struggling. I don't really know how else to put it.
No, Joe, it's so strange, as you mentioned. I mean, look, here in New York, as you mentioned, Katz's Deli. I mean, diners are a fixture here, and I walk down the street to come to work, and our diners are closed. And that's something in Manhattan, whatever hour of the day, your diner is open, for goodness sake, and there is someone in there having a matzo ball soup or getting an ice cream sundae, and there's just none of that. I know the restaurants are trying to make up for it, doing some delivery, doing some takeout. Is that helping restaurants like Cantor's at all? I mean, is that helping them keep the lights on a little bit, or is it really just not enough?
Yes. Yes, it is helping, but it is not enough. Both of those things are true at the same time. And so what we're starting to see is they're trying to get customers to come in. But as more and more cities go under these stricter measures for whether or not you can go out, it certainly hits the bottom line. When I asked how long it will take to recover, the answer really isn't clear, because you've got this 2-week shutdown here in Los Angeles that could go on, is likely to go on for much, much longer. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But it's strange. If we went outside right now, there's no traffic on Fairfax. It's bizarre. It is strange, and it just doesn't feel real. But people are trying to abide by those public health rules.
It is so unusual. And Joe, look, I know we've been talking about this in individual places and individual cities, but I mean, the National Restaurant Association is saying that more than 5 million layoffs could be coming. We heard Cantor's talking there. We heard Danny Meyer tearfully this morning on MSNBC saying that restaurants and groups like his own just have no choice. It's the last thing the hospitality industry wants to do. I mean, and then you just start to think about the ripple effect that could have as a whole on the restaurant industry if some of these places will be able to come back, and then what that will do to our economy. It's staggering.
Yeah. It is staggering, and you're only starting to see the effects of it, right? We just got unemployment claims from last week. Those spiked by 70,000 to, I think, about 280,000. That is before a lot of the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, even announced their layoffs and made those official. So we're also hearing from state unemployment offices that their phones are ringing off the hook. Their websites have been coming down because people are starting to file for unemployment. I've also talked to a number of restaurants here in L.A. who say they're not just closing temporarily. Some of them, they put sign-ups saying, we are closing for good. We will not make it through because the margins are just too tight, and we're just going to have to shut our doors. So this is going to have a very large long-term impact as we assess these short-term consequences.